The worst kind of chaos doesn't start with an explosion. It starts with something small, a voice too loud, a cup too full, and a person who thinks the world is just their stage. That's exactly how the night began. A red-eye flight from Los Angeles to New York that turned into the kind of story people whisper about on airport concourses. A story about a woman named Karen and how she picked the wrong man to mess with. I just faced the worst Karen ever. This woman threw hot coffee on my wife just to steal a window seat. And her excuse? She said she needed content, and my wife was blocking her view. What she didn't know was that I run 62 airports across the country, and that night I put her on a no-fly list forever. But let's rewind, because you need to hear how it all started. Before we dive in, let me know where you're listening from today. My world is a quiet one. The hum of generators, the buzz of lights, the endless scroll of numbers across a screen. Concrete curing schedules, FAA compliance reports, the kind of details that keep planes flying safely but put most people to sleep. I own airports, not planes, not airlines, just the spaces in between. The terminals, the jet bridges, the runways, the bones that hold up the sky. I like the order of it. It's clean, predictable. People, though, they're the opposite. My wife, Lena, understands that order better than anyone. She used to run airfield operations at our main hub before we decided one of us needed to live like a normal person with normal hours. She's sharp. The kind of woman who can take apart your argument with a single calm sentence and make you thank her for it. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. So when I tell you what happened on that flight felt like a break in the universe, I mean it. It went against everything Lena and I built our lives around. Peace, precision, respect. We were in seats 12A and 12B. Lena by the window, me in the middle. We always fly coach for domestic flights. It keeps us grounded, literally. She was leaning her head against the glass, watching the floodlights dance on the wings, a small smile playing on her lips. She says there's poetry in airport work. The rhythm of engines, the crews moving like clockwork. I was reviewing maintenance reports on my phone, lost in numbers. Everything was quiet, normal, until it wasn't. She appeared like a storm in designer sneakers. I'd learn her name soon enough, Karen Julian. Dressed in that expensive, careless way that says, I want you to notice me pretending not to care. Her phone was already up, camera angled like she was about to film something. Excuse me, she said, pointing at Lena. Her voice cut through the cabin like a blade. You're in my seat. Lena didn't even blink. She just said, 12A. That's what my ticket says. Karen tilted her phone toward us, claiming, well, my ticket says 12A too. I need the window. I'd get claustrophobic. But the screen in her hand clearly read 14C. I stayed quiet. This was Lena's battlefield, not mine. The flight attendant, Ben, came over with a calm smile. Is there a problem, ma'am? He asked. Yes, she snapped, loud enough for half the plane to hear. This woman is in my seat. I need the window for medical reasons. The dramatic pause she used on medical made it sound like she was auditioning for a soap opera. Ben checked both boarding passes and kept his voice steady. Ma'am, your seat is 14C. This is 12A. This is unacceptable, she declared, projecting like she was on stage. Her phone was definitely recording now. I'm a platinum medallion elite flyer. I was promised an upgrade. This airline is a disaster. She was holding a steaming cup of coffee, one of those overpriced airport blends that taste like regret. I knew the brand. I approved the lease for that kiosk. Lena opened her eyes, gave her that calm, surgical look that used to silence pilots mid-argument. My seat is 12A. Your seat is 14C, she said. This is a simple issue of basic reading. Karen's fake smile cracked. Something mean flickered underneath. You think you're so smart, don't you? She hissed. And then it happened. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. A quick flick of her wrist, and the lid flew off. A wave of scalding coffee splashed across Lena's lap and arm. Lena gasped. Not loud, not dramatic. Just one sharp intake of breath. I saw her body tense, the pain flashing in her eyes. Karen froze, her phone still filming, fake shock plastered across her face. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, she said, but the smirk on her lips told the truth. That was the moment my quiet world cracked. I didn't shout. I didn't move. I just watched her. Watched that smirk, and made a decision as precise as any I'd made in my life. This woman had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The flight crew moved fast. Ben was there with a first aid kit and a bottle of water, cooling Lena's arm. Another attendant, Maria, created a barrier between us and Karen, her voice steady. Ma'am, please step back. Phones were out. Passengers were whispering. Some were filming. Good. Let them record it all. Lena stayed calm, her face tight with pain but composed. She looked at me, eyes fierce. She wasn't a victim. She was assessing the situation, like a commander facing an unpredictable threat. I touched her knee lightly. "I've got this." Her nod said everything. "I know." Meanwhile, Karen had gone full Broadway. "I was assaulted!" she cried, camera pointed at us. "They took my seat. This is corporate malfeasance." A man across the aisle snorted. "Lady, we all saw you. You threw that coffee on purpose. I'm being harassed," she shrieked. "You're all witnesses." And then, like a curtain falling, a man stepped forward from the front of the cabin. Plain clothes, calm eyes, quiet authority. An air marshal. You could tell instantly. He didn't even look at her at first. "Is the captain aware?" he asked Ben. "Yes, sir," Ben replied, still tending to Lena. "Report logged. He requested you attend." The marshal nodded once. Then he turned to Lena. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need medical assistance?" "I'll live," she said through clenched teeth. "First-degree burn. No blisters." "Copy that," he said. "We'll have medics meet the door." Then his eyes turned to Karen. His voice was soft, but cold enough to freeze steel. "Ma'am, I need you to hand me your phone." "You can't do that." "This is evidence," she screeched. "You're right," he said evenly. "It is. You're also interfering with a flight crew. A federal offense. And you just assaulted a passenger, which is another. This device is now evidence. Chain of custody begins now." Her fake confidence wilted. She wasn't dealing with a gate agent or a barista. She was dealing with the law. Slowly, she handed him the phone. "Now," he said calmly, "I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. There's an empty seat in the back where you can sit until we land." As he spoke, he produced plastic flex cuffs from his pocket. "The cuffs go on at the rear. Row 30, he told Ben. "We'll seat her, then secure." Karen's eyes widened. "You're arresting me for this?" "It was an accident. She's being too sensitive." The marshal didn't even blink. He took her arm gently but firmly. "This is for the safety of the flight," he said. "Ma'am, please come with me." She was sputtering, protesting, but she went. As they walked her to the back of the plane, I saw it. She had a second phone tucked into her back pocket. With a sleight of hand that was almost impressive, she pulled it out and started a new live stream. Her voice, a hushed conspiratorial whisper. "You guys are not going to believe this. I'm being kidnapped by this airline. They're covering up their own negligence. Share this. Make it go viral." I leaned over to Lena. Ben was applying a cool compress to her arm. "You okay?" I asked softly. She looked at the retreating back of Karen Julian, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know," she said, her voice dry as a bone. "For someone who claims to be claustrophobic, she seems awfully eager to spend some time in a very small room with bars on the window." I almost laughed. That was my Lena. Even with a coffee burn stinging her arm, she was already writing the punchline. The hook for me wasn't just about the landing. It was about that second phone. This wasn't a simple tantrum. This was a calculated performance. And I was about to become her most unforgiving critic. Once Karen Julian was secured in the back, a strange calm settled over the cabin. The captain came on the intercom. His voice was the auditory equivalent of a weighted blanket. Deep, steady, and utterly reassuring. "Folks, this is your captain speaking. As you've seen, we had a small disturbance on board. The situation is now under control thanks to our professional flight crew and the assistance of a federal air marshal. We will be continuing on to JFK without any further delay. I want to apologize for any distress this may have caused. We ask that you remain in your seats. We'll have the cabin lights dimmed again for you shortly." It was a masterclass in de-escalation. No drama, no accusations, just facts and reassurance. But the damage was done. The cabin was buzzing. Phones stayed up, angles traded, whispers rising. The man in the construction polo, whose name we learned was Gary, leaned across the aisle. "Got a whole thing in 4K, he said with a grim sort of satisfaction. Showed it to the flight attendant. He took my name and number. A young woman a few rows up, a college student with a backpack covered in patches, did the same. An entire community of witnesses had formed, united by a shared sense of outrage. I saw Ben, the flight attendant, discreetly offer Gary and the college student vouchers for future flights. He then came to our row. Heck knelt down so he was at eye level with Lena. "On behalf of the airline, Mrs. Billings, I am so sorry this happened. We've upgraded you and your husband to our premium cabin for your connecting flight, and we've already arranged for a full refund for this leg of your journey. Is there anything else at all I can get for you?" I was impressed. This was textbook crisis management, but I had a different idea. I pointed toward the front of the coach cabin where a young family was trying to settle their 2 small children. One of the kids, a little boy no older than 5, had gotten splashed by the coffee. His dinosaur pajamas had a big brown stain on them, and his mother was dabbing at it with a wet wipe. He wasn't hurt, just startled and upset. "Give our upgrades to them," I said to Ben. "They look like they could use the extra space more than we could, and maybe find a free window seat for Gary and that student." They didn't have to get involved, but they did. Ben looked surprised, then smiled. A genuine smile this time. "Yes, sir." Right away, he went and spoke to the family, and the look of shocked, grateful relief on the parents' faces was worth more than any first-class seat. It was a small act of order in the midst of chaos, a tiny course correction. That's what Lena and I do. We fix things. While Lena rested, I made a quiet call. I used the plane's Wi-Fi, which is notoriously slow, but my phone has a satellite connection for a reason. It rang twice. "Dan, it's Ethan." Uncle Dan, as everyone called him, wasn't my actual uncle. He was my head of security for all 62 airports. He was a former FBI agent with a face like a roadmap of every back alley in Chicago, and a sense of humor so dry it was a fire hazard. Psych in the morning. "Ethan, this better not be about the new baggage system in Denver again." "It's not," I said, keeping my voice low. "I'm on a flight to JFK. We had an incident. A passenger assaulted Lena." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. Dan had known Lena for 20 years. He adored her. "Is she okay?" he asked, all traces of humor gone. "She's tough. First-degree burn on her arm, but she's more angry than hurt. The passenger who did it is a piece of work. Name is Karen Julian. She's currently in flex cuffs in the back of the plane, live streaming her ordeal on a second phone." I could practically hear Dan's mind working, the gears clicking into place. "Okay, JFK is our house. What do you need?" "I need everything," I said. "I want Port Authority of New York and New Jersey at the gate, not just one officer, a reception committee. I want our corporate PR lead on site, but discreetly. I want them to take statements from every passenger who wants to give one. I want every frame of CCTV from the gate, the jet bridge, everywhere. And I want you to start a file on Karen Julian. I have a feeling this isn't her first rodeo." "Consider it done," Dan said. "We'll be waiting for you." "And Ethan?" "Yeah, don't do anything stupid until you're on the ground. Then we can do something stupid, but professionally." I smiled. That was Dan. The plane began its final descent. The lights of New York, a glittering carpet below. "Captain, police and medical will meet us at gate C14. Remain seated until we stop." Somewhere below, a tug coughed. The hum steadied me. Karen Julian thought her performance was about to reach its climax when we landed. She was right about that, but she had the cast, the director, and the final scene completely wrong. She had no idea the theater she was about to enter was one I had built from the ground up. The moment the plane connected to the jet bridge, the tension in the cabin ratcheted up. Everyone knew what was coming. The fastened seatbelt sign pinged off, but nobody moved. All eyes were on the front door, waiting. The air marshal was already on his feet, standing quietly near the back of the plane where they had sequestered Karen Julian. He was waiting for the local authorities to take custody. It was a smooth, practiced handover. The cabin door opened and a senior gate agent stepped inside. She was immediately followed by 2 Port Authority police officers. They were not smiling. They were all business, their presence filling the narrow fuselage. The captain came out of the cockpit and spoke quietly with one of the officers, pointing back toward Karen. Everything was by the book. This was the part of my world I liked. Process, procedure, predictable outcomes. Karen Julian, however, was an agent of chaos. As the officers escorted her forward, she put on the performance of a lifetime. Her second phone was out, held high, her face a mask of tear-streaked indignation. "This is what they do to a woman who speaks up," she cried out to her unseen audience. "This is corporate America silencing a victim. Look at this brutality." The officers weren't touching her. Gary muttered, "Kidnapped from 2 feet away." A few chuckles eased the cabin. They were walking a respectful 2 feet away, simply escorting her. Brutality was a strong word for a polite invitation to leave the aircraft as she passed our row. Hearies locked on me. "You," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "You'll pay for this. I'll own this airline. I have hundreds of thousands of followers. They'll ruin you." I didn't say a word. I just met her gaze. My expression was neutral. I let her have her moment. I let her document her own delusion. Every word she spoke was another nail in her coffin. She just thought she was holding the hammer. We let the other passengers deplane first. My PR lead, a sharp woman named Anna, waited just past the podium at the jet bridge exit. She was a ghost, quietly directing any passengers who had witnessed the event to a comfortable waiting area where they could give voluntary statements and receive complimentary refreshments and travel vouchers for their trouble. It was about controlling the narrative by collecting the facts. Finally, when the cabin was nearly empty, Lena and I stood up to leave. The captain was standing by the cockpit and he nodded to us. "Mr. and Mrs. Billings, I'm Captain Evans. I am profoundly sorry for what you experienced on my flight." "It wasn't your fault, Captain," Lena said graciously. "Your crew was exemplary." "Thank you, ma'am." We stepped out onto the jet bridge. The two officers were there with Karen Julian, ranting to no one. Her second phone sat sealed in a clear evidence bag in the sergeant's hand. "Ma'am, we just need to ask you a few questions." "I'm not saying anything without my lawyer," she screeched. "And I'm documenting this illegal detention." The sergeant sighed, the weary sigh of a man who had seen it all. He looked over at me and Lena as we approached. "Sorry for the delay, folks. We'll have this cleared up in a moment." This was the moment I had planned to stay anonymous, to let the system work. But her threat, "I'll own this airline," and the direct personal attack on Lena made it different. This wasn't just about an unruly passenger anymore. This was about my wife, my world, my house. I stepped forward. I didn't raise my voice. Spoke in the same quiet, measured tone I use in a boardroom. "Sergeant," I said, extending a hand. "Ethan Billings, my wife Lena." He shook my hand, his brow furrowed. The name clearly didn't register. "Sir, we're taking statements. We'll need one from your wife when she's ready." "Of course," I said, "she'll give a full statement, but I think I can help clarify the jurisdictional issues here." I gestured vaguely at the jet bridge, the concrete pillars, the terminal visible through the windows. "You're a port authority, and you have jurisdiction on the aircraft itself, but from this point forward, she's on my property." The sergeant looked confused. "Your property, sir?" Karen Julian actually laughed, a harsh grating sound. "His property? Who do you think you are, buddy? The King of England?" I ignored her. I looked directly at the sergeant. "My company operates this airport under a long-term lease. Same for Los Angeles and 60 others. So, while the airline will pursue crew interference charges and any flight bans, I handle property access. My company will file complaints for assault, endangerment, and trespass and supply the evidence, effective immediately." The silence on the jet bridge was absolute. The only sound was the distant whine of a taxiing jet. Karen Julian's jaw snapped shut. Her phone drooped in her hand. The color drained from her face. The sergeant's eyes widened as the name Billings finally clicked into place. He had seen it on 1,000 security memos and construction permits. He looked from me to the terminal and back again. The self-proclaimed queen of social media had just thrown coffee on the wife of the man who signed the leases. Her viral moment had just collided with a reality she couldn't possibly comprehend. And the look on her face was the first real satisfying down payment on the justice that was to come. By the time we got home to our apartment in the city, the sun was threatening to rise. Lena had a proper medical dressing on her arm, and the exhaustion was setting in for both of us. We were running on adrenaline and stale airplane air. I poured us both a glass of water, and we sat in the quiet of our living room, the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling. For a moment, it was peaceful. Then Lena picked up her tablet. "You're not going to like this," she said. I knew what was coming. I sat next to her on the sofa and watched. Karen Julian's social media machine was in full swing. The video she shot on her second phone was everywhere. It was cleverly edited, of course. It started with her looking distressed, talking about her claustrophobia and the rude passenger who wouldn't move. It completely omitted her being in the wrong seat. It showed the coffee spill in a quick, shaky cut that made it look like an accident, a stumble. It showed Lena's pained reaction but framed it as an overreaction. The audio was manipulated with dramatic music laid underneath. The climax was her being unjustly arrested, portraying the air marshal and the police as corporate thugs. The title of the video was "Ken vs. Karen Air My In-Flight Nightmare." The irony was apparently lost on her. The comment section was a cesspool. Her followers, thousands of them, were eating it up. "Stay strong, Queen," one wrote. "Sue them for everything," another chimed in. "This is what happens when you stand up to the man." The airline's social media pages were being flooded with angry hashtags and one-star views from people who hadn't been on the flight, hadn't seen the truth, and didn't care. They were a digital mob, and Karen Julian was their Joan of Arc. "She's good," Lena admitted, her voice tight with grudging respect. "She knows how to manipulate an audience. She's turned herself into the victim and used into the entitled villains." "It's a lie," I said, my voice flat. "It's a performance. A lie travels halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes," Lena murmured, quoting the old adage. "And right now, the truth is barefoot and still at the airport filling out paperwork." My phone buzzed. It was Uncle Dan. I put him on speaker. "Morning, kids. Hope you're enjoying your newfound internet fame." His voice was growly, but I could hear the undercurrent of fury. "We've been digging into your new friend, Karen Julian. You were right, Ethan. This isn't her first rodeo. It's her whole business model." He proceeded to lay it out for us. Karen Julian was the head of a small crew of clout-chasing grifters. There were 4 of them in total. They targeted service industries, airlines, hotels, high-end restaurants. Their method was always the same. They would create a minor manufactured conflict, a lost reservation, a supposedly cold meal, a disputed seat assignment. Then they would escalate it, filming the entire time until they provoked a reaction. They were masters of pushing people to their breaking point. The goal was twofold. First, create a dramatic viral video that would drive traffic to their social media channels, which they monetized. Second, bully the company into giving them freebies to make them go away. Flight vouchers, hotel suites, gift cards. It was a well-oiled shakedown operation disguised as consumer advocacy. We found a pattern going back 3 years, Dan said. Dozens of incidents. Most companies just pay them off. It's cheaper than the bad press. They file a nuisance complaint, get a $5,000 travel voucher, and call it a win. But this time they picked the wrong flight. They assaulted my wife, I said, the words cold and hard. This isn't about a voucher. I know, Dan said, which is why we won't play their game. We'll change the rules. Lena sat up a little straighter. I could see the old airfield ops chief clicking back online. The logistical part of her brain was firing up. What are you thinking, Dan? She asked. They're predictable, Dan said. They're arrogant. They think they're untouchable because no one has ever had the resources or the will to fight back. They just gave us a mountain of evidence. But it's all their word against ours in the court of public opinion. To win this, we need to catch them in the act, red-handed, on our terms. A plan began to form in my mind. A cold, precise, surgical plan. Karen Julian wanted a show. She wanted a stage. Fine. I owned the lights, the box office, and the fire code. She thought she was the star. But she was about to be recast in a role she never auditioned for. The fool. Dan, I said, get the legal team on a conference call and loop in the head of operations at our Chicago hub. I have an idea. It's petty. It's elaborate. And it's going to be beautiful. The sun was fully up now, streaming through the windows. A new day was dawning. And for Karen Julian, it was going to be a very, very bad one. The war room was one of my smaller conference rooms at our corporate headquarters. Soundproof, no windows, and equipped with a coffee machine that could dissolve a spoon. Around the table sat the key players, me, Lena, Uncle Dan, our lead counsel, and via secure video link, the general manager and head of security for our Chicago hub. Chicago was perfect. It was one of our biggest airports, a complex ecosystem of moving parts, and far enough away from New York to feel like a separate incident. All right, I began, pacing in front of a large digital whiteboard. Here's the theory. Karen Julian and her crew are arrogant. They think they won. They're riding a wave of online support and probably a nice little revenue bump from their viral video. They're going to get cocky. They're going to do it again and soon to capitalize on the momentum. Our lawyer, a cautious man named Marcus, cleared his throat. Ethan, this sounds dangerously close to entrapment. We have to be very careful. We can't induce them to commit a crime they weren't already planning to commit. We already have texts where she plans the hot coffee gambit. We're observing, not creating. I agree, Marcus. I said, we're not going to induce. We're going to facilitate. We're going to create the perfect environment for them to do exactly what they always do. We're just going to make sure that this time the cameras are ours, the witnesses are ours, and the narrative is ours. Lena leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. This was her element. A controlled environment, she said. Red cones, clear lanes, one predictable meltdown. Exactly, I said. I started sketching on the whiteboard. Step 1, debate. Dan's team has learned that Karen's crew uses a specific travel booking site that offers influencer perks for people with a certain number of followers. It's mostly bogus, but it's how they find their targets. We are going to work with that airline, the same one from the first flight, who are now our very motivated partners in this, to plant a fake offer. A deeply discounted first-class fare from Chicago to Miami, a popular influencer route. Dan chimed in. My guys are already drafting the email. It'll look like a clerical error, a fat finger discount. Too good to pass up, especially for grifters who think they're smarter than everyone else. Step 2. The stage. I continued, drawing a diagram of a terminal gate area. When they book the flight, they'll be assigned to gate K-12, but K-12 will be a ghost gate, a decoy. We'll staff it with our own people, hand-picked, specially trained security and airline staff who are in on the plan. They know their roles. Their job is to be polite, unhelpful, and to create a minor, frustrating bureaucratic hurdle. Lena picked up the thread, the classic runaround. Oh, I'm sorry. Your seat has been reassigned. I'm not showing that confirmation number here. Just enough friction to make Karen feel righteously indignant. Precisely, I said. While she's arguing at the decoy gate, we'll make a last-minute gate change announcement for the Miami flight to a gate on the other side of the concourse, K-19. This creates time, pressure, and stress. It's a catalyst. Step 3, the trap. I said, drawing a line from K-12 to K-19. Gate K-19 will be real. The flight will be real. But the jet bridge will be our primary theater of operations. We will have a temporary but official-looking rope barrier just before the jet bridge door, with a sign that says crew access only. Please wait for pre-boarding. Violation triggers an automatic security response. Mike rehearsed under his breath. The agent at the gate will be deliberately slow, fumbling with her computer. The goal is to make Karen feel she's about to miss her flight. We expect her to lose her patience and try to breach the barrier. And the cameras, Marcus asked, scribbling notes. Everywhere? Dan answered, a grim smile on his face. We're swapping out the standard CCTV and that entire concourse with high-resolution 4K cameras with full audio capture. The gate agents, the flight crew, and my security personnel will all be wearing body cams. The coffee kiosk opposite the gate will have 2 employees who are actually our surveillance techs filming from another angle. We will have more camera coverage than the Super Bowl. But what if she doesn't take the bait at the gate? Lena asked. What if she just waits? That's where her crew comes in, I said. We've identified her 2 main accomplices. The big one, the muscle, we'll call Goonon. The other one, the instigator, is Goon 2. While Karen is creating the drama at the gate, her accomplices will be executing a synchronized maneuver at baggage claim. We'll have a bag on the carousel that looks exactly like theirs. They will stage a loud, aggressive fight with another one of our undercover agents over the bag. It's their classic diversionary tactic. It creates chaos, draws security away, and gives them another angle to film for their travel nightmare montage. The Chicago security chief on the video screen nodded. My teams will be in position, both in uniform and plain clothes. We'll let the baggage claim incident escalate just enough to be credible. Then we'll shut it down cleanly and on camera. The plan was set. We had the beats, the cameras, and the crew. Time to roll. The day of the sting felt like the morning of a major military operation. Lena and I were in the Airport Operations Center in Chicago, a cavernous room filled with screens displaying every corner of the airport. It was the airport's nerve center and today our control room. Uncle Dan stood beside us, sipping a disgustingly black coffee and murmuring into a radio that connected him to every operative on the ground. The air was thick with a quiet, focused energy. They're through security. A voice crackled over Dan's radio. All 4 of them. Karen's in the lead. Phone already out. Looks like she's vlogging her luxury travel experience. As predicted, Lena said softly, her eyes glued to a monitor showing the main concourse. The narcissist's prelude. We watched on the screens as they swaggered through the terminal. They moved with an unearned confidence, laughing too loudly, cutting in front of people at the coffee stand. They moved like cameras were oxygen. They made their way to Gate K-12, our decoy. The gate agent, a veteran named Sarah, who had volunteered for the role and had the patience of a saint, gave them a polite, professional smile. Welcome to Miami, she chirped, and the show began. We watched, transfixed as the scene played out exactly as we had scripted it. Karen presented her phone with a flourish. Sarah frowned at her computer. I'm so sorry, Miss Julian. I'm not seeing your seat assignments here. Are you sure you completed the check-in process? Karen's voice, crystal clear through our audio feeds, dripped with condescension. Of course, I completed it. I'm a Platinum Elite traveler. Look again. This went on for 5 excruciating minutes. Sarah was brilliant. She was apologetic. She was seemingly trying to be helpful, but she was an immovable wall of pleasant incompetence. We could see Karen's frustration mounting. Her 2 goons were standing behind her, filming her and Sarah, occasionally muttering about the terrible service. This was the kindling. Then came the spark. The overhead announcement piped in by an operator in our control room. Final boarding call for Flight 227 to Miami, now departing from Gate K-19. All passengers should proceed to Gate K-19 immediately. Panic flashed across Karen's face. This was a complication she hadn't planned. Her perfectly crafted scene of victimhood was being interrupted by the mundane reality of a gate change. This is ridiculous, she shrieked at Sarah. You kept us here on purpose. She and her crew took off at a run. A chaotic herd thundering down the concourse toward K-19. Phase 2 is a go, Dan said into his radio. All units at K-19, standby. Baggage claim team, you are green. The feed switched to the baggage claim area on a different floor. It was a chaotic ballet. We saw Karen's other 2 accomplices, Goon 1 and Goon 2, spot the decoy bag on the carousel. At the same time, our undercover agent, a burly security guard in civilian clothes, grabbed it. Hey, Goon 1 yelled, shoving the agent. That's my bag, the agent shoved back. Get your hands off me. It escalated in seconds. A classic shove match designed to look ugly and spontaneous. Phones held by Goon 2 were immediately out, capturing the airport security attacking passengers' narrative. But simultaneously upstairs, the main event was beginning. Karen arrived at Gate K-19, breathless and furious. She saw the short line, the fumbling gate agent, and the rope barrier. She saw the plane sitting just outside the window, and she snapped. "We're not waiting in this line," she yelled, pushing past a family. She marched straight to the rope barrier. "We're getting on that plane." The new gate agent, another volunteer named Mike, held up a hand. "Ma'am, I need you to wait. We haven't started pre-boarding." "I'm not waiting!" she screamed, and she ducked under the rope, making a beeline for the jet bridge door. That was it. That was the moment. The physical breach of a secure area. Mike moved to block her, and she shoved him hard in the chest. "Get out of my way." It was over in an instant. Before Karen could take another step, two uniformed security officers who had been pretending to talk to a pilot nearby were on her. They didn't tackle her. They didn't yell. They simply boxed her in. Their movement swift and certain. "Ma'am, you need to step back behind the barrier." Now downstairs, the shove match at baggage claim was also reaching its conclusion. As soon as the first real punch was thrown by Goon 1, 4 Planello officers materialized out of the crowd and separated them. The whole thing was contained in less than 10 seconds. Bodycam audio break. Hands visible. Step back clean, professional, and captured from at least 7 different angles. No injuries. Charges documented. Paperwork already printing. Back in the operations center, we all let out a collective breath we didn't realize we'd been holding. It had worked. Every beat, every mark, every line had been hit perfectly. Karen was puttering. Her crew was detained. And we had it all. Every shove, every shout, every self-incriminating word was now a pristine digital file on our servers. The trap had been sprung. The evidence was secure. The look on Lena's face was not one of triumph, but of grim satisfaction. The kind of look an engineer gets when a complex machine powers on for the first time, exactly as designed. The show was over. Now it was time for the editing. The days that followed were a quiet storm of data compilation. We were no longer in a war room. We were in an evidence room. Marcus, our lawyer, had set up a secure digital locker where every piece of information was being uploaded, cataloged, and cross-referenced. It was a beautiful, terrifying mountain of proof. Watching it all come together was like watching the slow, meticulous construction of a cage. We started with the first flight, the red-eye. We had the official report from Captain Evans, a detailed minute-by-minute log of the incident. We had the signed, sworn statements from over a dozen passengers, including Gary, the construction guy, and the college student. We had their cell phone videos, which, when synced together, gave us a multi-angle view of the coffee assault. The videos clearly showed the deliberate nature of Karen's actions, the flick of the wrist, the smirk on her face. We even had the testimony from the family with the little boy in the dinosaur pajamas. Then we layered on the evidence from our sting operation. This was the master stroke. Dan's team had assembled an edited timeline of the day's events, a split-screen presentation that was both damning and, in a dark way, comical. On one side of the screen, you saw Karen's crew at the decoy gate complaining about the service. On the other side, you saw our team in the operations center coolly executing the gate change announcement. The climax of the presentation was the synchronized chaos. We had 4 camera angles of Karen shoving the gate agent and breaching the rope barrier at K-19. We had the agent's body cam, which showed her face contorted in rage. We had the wide-angle CCTV, which showed the context, the lack of any real threat, the clear signage. We had the feed from the surveillance text at the coffee kiosk, a perfect side profile. Simultaneously on another split screen, we showed the baggage claim scuffle, 7 different angles. We had the body cams of the responding officers, the overhead security feed, and even the footage from the phone of Goon 2, which we had obtained via a search warrant for his device after his arrest. A night judge signed it within an hour. He had filmed his own accomplice committing assault. The hubris was breathtaking. But the real treasure trove was Karen Julian's digital footprint. We had her live streams from both incidents. In the first, she openly admitted to being in the wrong seat, but framed it as her right as an influencer. In the second, we could hear her directing her crew. "Okay, you start the fight at the carousel in 5 minutes. Make it look good." She was directing her own crime documentary, and we had the final cut. Marcus was practically giddy. "This I say tight," he said, pointing to a monitor. "Assault, conspiracy, creating a public disturbance, interfering with airport security operations, and that's just the criminal side. On the civil side, we have damages. Defamation." He trailed off because at that exact moment, his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, an unfamiliar number from a prestigious law firm. He answered it, his voice cautious. Marcus Thorne speaking. He listened for a moment, his eyebrows shooting up. He muted the phone. "You are not going to believe this," he whispered to us. That was a lawyer representing one of the accomplices, the one who was filming a baggage claim. "He wants to make a deal. He says his client is terrified and wants to flip. He's offering full cooperation in exchange for leniency. Lena and I looked at each other. This was a development we hadn't anticipated. We had them dead to rights. What more could this person possibly offer? What does he have, Marcus? I asked. Marcus unmuted the phone. What kind of cooperation are we talking about? He listened again, a slow smile spreading across his face. He looked at us, his eyes wide with disbelief. He says his client has everything, Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. The group chats, the planning documents, their financial records. He says he can hand us the entire conspiracy on a silver platter. It was the ultimate twist. We had built a perfect cage of external evidence observing their behavior from the outside. And now someone from the inside was about to hand us the key. A detailed blueprint of the crime written in the criminal's own words. The mountain of proof was about to become an entire mountain range. Karen Julian's carefully constructed world of lies and manipulation was about to be utterly and completely dismantled, not by her enemies, but by one of her own. The meeting took place in a sterile conference room at the lawyer's office. It felt less like a legal meeting and more like a spy movie. The accomplice, a young man named Kevin, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth, sat huddled next to his lawyer. He was the one we had called Goon 2, the cameraman. He was pale and fidgety, a stark contrast to the arrogant persona he projected in their videos. He was a follower, not a leader, and he was clearly terrified of the consequences Karen had led him into. My client wishes to make a full proffer, his lawyer began. All business. He is prepared to testify against Miss Julian and the other members of their group. In exchange, we are asking for the prosecution to consider reducing the charges against him to a single misdemeanor with no jail time. Marcus, our lawyer, sat back in his chair. That's a generous ask. What does he have that we don't already have on video? Kevin's lawyer slid a sleek silver laptop across the table. Everything, he said simply. He opened the laptop and began the presentation. It was a guided tour through the sordid little world of Karen Julian's grifting operation. First, he showed us the group chats. They used a secure messaging app, but Kevin had saved the entire history. It was all there in black and white. Conversations planning their scams in meticulous detail. They rated airlines and hotels based on how easily they could be intimidated. They workshopped dialogue. Say you have a severe gluten allergy. That always works. One message read, "Remember to cry, but don't let your mascara run. It looks fake." Read another from Karen. They had even planned the coffee assault on Lena. Wes saw the messages from the night before the flight. Karen wrote, "Got a red eye tomorrow. Going to try the hot coffee gambit. Find me a good window seat occupied by someone who looks like they won't make a scene." The casual cruelty of it made my blood run cold. They had targeted Lena because she looked calm and unassuming. They had miscalculated badly. Next, Kevin showed us their unedited video files. For every slick, manipulative video they posted online, there was hours of raw footage. We saw them laughing and joking between takes as they staged a scene of finding a bug in their hotel room. We saw Karen coaching her other accomplice on how to fake a fall on a wet floor. Most damningly, we saw the raw footage of the coffee incident. It included a few seconds at the beginning that had been cut from the public video, where Karen looked directly at her phone and whispered, "Okay, watch this. Time to get us a free trip to Europe." It was premeditated. It was a confession, but the final exhibit was the masterpiece. Kevin opened a spreadsheet. It was their accounting ledger. Every single scam they had ever pulled was listed, dating back 3 years. Each row had a date, the name of the company they targeted, the type of scam they ran, cold food, lost luggage, seat dispute, and a column for the payout. It was meticulously detailed. $500 gift card, $2,000 travel voucher, 3 free nights in a suite. Estimated value $2,400. At the bottom of the spreadsheet, there was a grand total of their earnings from the past 3 years. It was well into 6 figures. This changed everything. This wasn't just a series of isolated incidents of bad behavior. This was organized, systematic fraud. The spreadsheet was a business plan for a criminal enterprise. It proved intent, conspiracy, and a pattern of racketeering. It elevated the case from a simple assault charge to something far more serious. I looked at Kevin. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the table, his shoulders slumped. He had been a willing participant, but it was clear he was in over his head. He was a small-time player who had hitched his wagon to a charismatic sociopath, and now he was looking at a federal indictment. His fear had finally outweighed his loyalty. Marcus closed the laptop. He looked at Kevin's lawyer. "We'll be in touch," he said, his voice grim. We stood up and left the room. Out in the hallway, Marcus let out a long, low whistle. "I've been a lawyer for 30 years, he said. "I've never seen an opponent hand-deliver a cannon and then help you aim it at their own head. This is no longer a trial. This is a sentencing hearing. They just don't know they're attending yet." Lena was quiet as we walked to the elevator. I put my arm around her. "You okay?" She nodded, a hard, determined look in her eyes. "She didn't just spill coffee on me, Ethan. She targeted me. She planned it. She thought I was weak." She looked at me, and a slow, cold smile spread across her face. "She's about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating the quiet ones." The doors to the elevator opened and we stepped inside. The descent was smooth and silent. It felt like the perfect metaphor for Karen Julian's career. The courtroom was small and modern, all light wood and unflattering fluorescent lighting. It lacked the gravitas of a grand judicial chamber, which seemed fitting for such a grubby case. Karen Julian sat at the defendant's table with her remaining accomplices. She was trying to project an air of bored confidence, but it wasn't working. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her expensive outfit looked rumpled. The online mob that had supported her had largely moved on to the next fleeting outrage, especially after a few key legal bloggers got leaked copies of the spreadsheet. Her co-conspirator, Kevin, sat on the other side of the courtroom with his lawyer, looking small and miserable. He was the state's star witness. Lena and I sat in the front row. We weren't there as victims seeking pity. We were there as witnesses to a process. We were there to see the system work. The case wasn't even about us anymore. The prosecution had rolled up all of Karen's scams into one comprehensive case of fraud, conspiracy, and assault. Her lawyer was a court-appointed public defender who looked overwhelmed. He tried his best, arguing that his clients were performance artists, satirizing corporate culture. He claimed the spreadsheet was just a fantasy ledger, a creative writing exercise. The prosecutor, a sharp young woman who clearly relished the case, didn't even bother to cross-examine. She just played the videos. She played the raw, unedited footage of Karen whispering, "Time to get us a free trip to Europe," before dousing Lena with coffee. The courtroom was silent. She played the body cam video of Karen shoving the gate agent in Chicago. She played the CCTV footage of the stage fight at baggage claim. And then she put the spreadsheet up on the courtroom's big screens. Every fraudulent transaction highlighted in red. The public defender's performance art defense evaporated under the weight of it all. When Kevin took the stand, it was a formality. He walked the prosecutor through the chats, the videos, the finances. He explained their methods, their motives. He looked over at Karen once, a pleading look in his eyes, but she just stared at him with pure, undiluted hatred. Her ship was sinking, and she was furious at the one rat who had managed to find a lifeboat. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who looked like she'd seen every scam in the book, listened patiently. When it was all over, she took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "In my time on this bench," she began, her voice weary, "I've seen greed and foolishness in many forms, but rarely have I seen them so meticulously documented by the perpetrators themselves." She looked directly at Karen. "You are not a victim. You are not an advocate. You are a con artist. You prey on the goodwill of businesses and the hard work of their employees to line your own pockets and feed your own ego." The verdict was swift. Guilty on all counts. The judge favored restitution, bans, and public accountability over jail, and got creative with sentencing. But their punishment was designed to be a perfect poetic form of justice. They each received 5 years of probation, hefty fines that would wipe out all their fraudulent gains, and a court order to issue public retractions on all their social media channels. And then came the final twist of the knife. Furthermore, the judge said, a slight smile playing on her lips, "Miss Julian, your specific crime involved the use of coffee as a weapon in a public space. Therefore, you were sentenced to 200 hours of community service, 1 hour for every incident in your ledger, rounded up," the judge added. "You will spend those hours cleaning. Specifically, you will be cleaning the glass-fronted walls and windows of the terminals at John F. Kennedy International Airport under the supervision of the Port Authority Maintenance Department. The same walls she once splashed from the other side." A ripple of stifled laughter went through the courtroom. Karen's face went from pale to ghostly white. It was a sentence of pure, unadulterated humiliation. But the consequences didn't end there. Outside the courtroom, representatives from the Airline Alliance and my own corporation were waiting. They served Karen and her crew with official notices. Multiple carriers banned them with notices to partners. My airport served trespass papers. Violate one and you meet a judge before you meet a gate. In a single afternoon, her entire world had been dismantled. Her business model was illegal. Her reputation was destroyed. Her ability to travel, the very foundation of her influencer lifestyle, was gone. She couldn't fly. She couldn't even enter an airport terminal unless it was with a bucket and a squeegee. She had tried to ruin us. Instead, we had simply given her enough rope, and she had built her own gallows. It was a quiet, surgical, and deeply satisfying victory. 3 months later, life had returned to its normal, quiet rhythm. The noise of Karen, Julian, had faded from the internet, replaced by the next transient outrage. Her social media channels were ghost towns, monuments to collapsed empire of lies. For us, the incident was now just a story, a reminder that sometimes the most logical, predictable systems require a firm hand to protect them from chaos. Lena and I were walking through the main terminal at JFK. We were flying to London for a long overdue vacation. And for the first time in a while, the airport felt like a place of possibility again, not a battlefield. The morning sun streamed through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the tarmac, glinting off the wings of the planes. It was one of my favorite views, a perfect blend of architecture, engineering, and human ambition. We stopped at a coffee kiosk, the same brand Karen had used as her weapon. I bought 2 black coffees. As I turned from the counter, I saw her. At first, I barely recognized her. She was wearing a bright orange safety vest over a drab jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her face was bare of any makeup. She was pushing a large yellow janitorial cart. It was Karen Julian. She was working her way down the line of windows, spraying each one with a blue cleaning fluid and then wiping it down with a long-handle squeegee. Her movements were sullen and mechanical. There was a Port Authority supervisor watching her from a distance, a bored look on his face. This was her new reality. Her stage was no longer a first-class cabin. It was a 100ft wall of glass. Her audience was no longer millions of followers. It was a stream of anonymous travelers who didn't give her a second glance. She saw us. Her eyes, dull and lifeless a moment before, flashed with a familiar spark of hatred. She stopped her work, her hands tightening on the squeegee. She looked like she wanted to say something, to scream, to throw the bottle of cleaner, but she didn't. She just glared, trapped in her orange vest, a prisoner of her own petty choices. The probation officer was only a few feet away, and she knew it. I was content to just walk away, to leave her in the quiet humiliation she'd earned. But Lena had other ideas. She had that little glint in her eye, the one that meant a final perfectano liner was about to be deployed. She walked right up to the glass that Karen had just finished cleaning. She stood on the other side, looking out at the planes, deliberately turning her back to Karen. She took a slow, deliberate sip off her coffee. Then she leaned in close to the pristine glass right at Karen's eye level and exhaled softly. A small, perfect circle of fog appeared on the window momentarily, marring the clean surface. Karen's eyes bulged with fury. Lena didn't say a word. She just looked at the little circle of condensation, then looked over her shoulder at Karen and gave her a small, pitying smile. She took my arm and we walked away, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the vast terminal. Somewhere, a tug coughed to life. The hum was back. I glanced back one last time. Karen was standing there, frozen, staring at the small fading circle of fog on the glass, at any final piece of chaos on her perfectly ordered punishment. She had to wipe it away. It was her job. As we headed toward our gate, I leaned over to Lena. That was a little petty, don't you think? She took another sip of her coffee and smiled, the morning sun catching her face. Ethan, she said, her voice the definition of calm satisfaction. It's not petty. It's just good, clean fun. And in my quiet, orderly world, I knew she was absolutely right. Justice, like a well-run airport, is all about making sure everyone ends up exactly where they're supposed to.